Imagine dedicating 25 years of your life to saving lives inside Britain's National Health Service, only to be treated like an outsider in the very institution you have served with loyalty and expertise. Shunned from meetings, excluded from opportunities, undermined at every turn, all because of the color of your skin. This is not a fictional story. This is the reality that senior black nurse and healthcare manager Michelle Cox faced in the heart of the NHS. In February 2023, Michelle Cox made history. She won a landmark employment tribunal case against NHS England. The tribunal ruled that she had been subjected to direct race discrimination, harassment, and victimization. Her manager created an intimidating, hostile, and humiliating environment that made it almost impossible for her to carry out her role effectively. This victory did not come easily. It came after years of service, whistleblowing on poor clinical practices, and then facing retaliation when she tried to hold the system accountable. This case is one of the most important race discrimination rulings in the NHS in recent memory. It lifts the lid on how institutional racism operates behind closed doors in one of Britain's most respected public institutions. While the NHS is celebrated worldwide as a symbol of fairness and care for all, black and ethnic minority staff continue to report shocking levels of discrimination, bullying, and unfair treatment. Michelle Cox's story shows that even when you follow the rules, speak up for patients, and do your job well, the system can still turn against you if you challenge the status quo. Today, we are going to explore this case in depth. We will look at what exactly happened to Michelle Cox, the evidence that was presented, the tribunal's damning findings, the historical context of racism in British healthcare, and what this victory means not just for the NHS but for institutional discrimination across the UK and globally. This is a story of courage in the face of power. It is a story that every person who cares about fairness in Britain needs to hear. If this kind of injustice makes your blood boil, if you believe that no worker should be punished for speaking the truth, then stay with this video until the end. Hit the like button right now if you stand against racism in our public services. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Your support helps us continue bringing these hidden stories of racism and discrimination to light. Staying silent or simply scrolling past only allows these injustices to continue. By watching, liking, and sharing, you become part of the pressure for real change. Let's begin. Michelle Cox had given more than 25 years of dedicated service to the NHS. She worked as a senior nurse and healthcare manager in the northwest of England, focusing on continuing healthcare services. Her role involved making important decisions about patient care, ensuring that vulnerable people received the support they needed. By all accounts, she was highly experienced, professional, and committed to high standards. But things began to change when Michelle decided to blow the whistle on poor clinical practices in her service. She raised concerns that she believed could affect patient safety. Instead of being thanked or supported, she faced resistance. When she submitted a formal grievance that included serious allegations of race discrimination by her line manager, Gil Paxton, the response from the organization was deeply inadequate. The tribunal later heard how Michelle was systematically excluded. She was left out of team meetings. She was not invited to away days that other colleagues attended. Opportunities to recruit into senior posts within her team were blocked or withheld from her. This was not occasional oversight. The tribunal described it as exclusion at every opportunity. The cumulative effect was to create a working environment that was intimidating, hostile, and humiliating for a black woman who had given her career to the NHS. When Michelle tried to use the official grievance and appeal processes, those very processes failed her. The investigations did not properly examine her claims of racism. Key aspects of her complaint were ignored or downplayed. The tribunal ruled that the way the NHS handled her grievance and appeal amounted to further acts of discrimination. This is a critical point. Not only was she discriminated against by her manager, but the institution itself discriminated against her when she tried to seek justice. The employment tribunal sat for several days in Manchester. Evidence was presented. Witnesses were called. Documents were examined in detail. In a unanimous judgment, the tribunal found in Michelle Cox's favor on the claims of race discrimination and whistleblowing detriment. The judgment was clear and powerful. It stated that less favorable treatment had occurred because of race. It highlighted how subconscious bias and poor procedures allowed the mistreatment to continue unchecked. This was not an isolated incident. The case revealed deeper problems in how the NHS manages complaints from Black and ethnic minority staff. Statistics from NHS staff surveys have repeatedly shown that Black nurses and other global majority staff are more likely to experience bullying, harassment, and discrimination than their white colleagues. They are also more likely to face formal disciplinary action, even when controlling for other factors. Michelle Cox's case puts real human faces and real names to these statistics. To fully understand why this case matters so much, we need to step back and look at the broader historical context of racism in the United Kingdom, particularly within the health service. The NHS was founded in 1948, and from the very beginning it relied heavily on staff from Commonwealth countries, including the Caribbean and Africa. The Windrush generation played a vital role in building the health service that we know today. Yet even then, they often faced discrimination in pay, promotion, and working conditions. Throughout the decades that followed, reports and inquiries have highlighted persistent racial inequalities. The 1980s saw urban disturbances partly fueled by tensions around policing and institutional racism. The McPherson Report in 1999 famously described the Metropolitan Police as institutionally racist following the Stephen Lawrence case. Similar concerns have been raised about other public institutions, including the NHS. In more recent years, the COVID-19 pandemic exposed stark disparities. Black, Asian, and minority ethnic healthcare workers were disproportionately affected, both in terms of infection rates and deaths. Staff surveys continued to show high levels of discrimination. Black staff reported feeling less able to speak up safely. Promotion rates remained lower. Disciplinary processes appeared to disproportionately target ethnic minority workers. This is the environment in which Michelle Cox worked. She was not the first and unfortunately will not be the last to experience such treatment. But what makes her case stand out is that she fought back. She gathered evidence. She took the powerful NHS England to tribunal, and she won. Supported by the Royal College of Nursing, she refused to be silenced. The tribunal judgment went further than simply finding discrimination. It criticized the way NHS England conducted its internal investigations. It noted that the grievance panel failed to address the core issue of race. This failure itself was ruled discriminatory. The judgment sends a strong message to all employers, especially large public bodies. You cannot ignore complaints of racism. You cannot sweep them under the carpet with inadequate processes. You have a legal duty to investigate fairly and thoroughly. After the tribunal victory, Michelle Cox did not simply walk away. She has continued to speak out. She launched the Michelle Cox Anti-Racism Award in partnership with others to recognize and support those fighting discrimination in healthcare. Her actions turned personal pain into public progress. She has become a beacon for many global majority staff who feel voiceless inside large organizations. Now let's look more closely at the specific events that led to this landmark case. Michelle worked in the Northwest Regional Team dealing with continuing healthcare. This area of work involves complex decisions about funding and support for patients with long-term health needs. It is demanding and requires both clinical knowledge and administrative skill. Michelle brought both to the role. When she raised concerns about poor practice that could put patients at risk, she expected the organization to take them seriously. Instead, the response was defensive. Tensions with her line manager escalated. What followed was a pattern of exclusion that made Michelle's working life increasingly difficult. She was not included in important communications. Decisions were made without her input. She was effectively sidelined in her own team. When she put in a formal grievance, she detailed both the clinical concerns and the racial discrimination she believed she was experiencing. The grievance process should have been a safeguard. Instead, it became another source of distress. The investigation was limited. Key questions about race were not properly explored. The appeal fared little better. Michelle felt that the system was not interested in genuine accountability. This is where the tribunal process became so important. Employment tribunals exist to provide independent scrutiny when internal processes fail. In this case, the tribunal listened carefully to the evidence. They examined the behavior of the manager. They looked at how the organization responded. They considered whether a hypothetical white comparator would have been treated the same way. The conclusion was clear. The less favorable treatment was because of race. The judgment also upheld the whistleblowing claim. This is significant because it recognizes that Michelle suffered detriment for raising legitimate concerns about patient safety. Whistleblowers in the NHS have historically faced retaliation. This ruling adds to the body of case law that seeks to protect those who speak up. The human cost of such discrimination cannot be overstated. Constant exclusion and hostility take a heavy toll on mental health, confidence, and physical well-being. Many staff in similar situations leave the profession altogether, leading to loss of experienced talent. This ultimately harms patients. When the NHS loses dedicated black nurses like Michelle Cox, everyone suffers. This case also raises important questions about subconscious bias. The tribunal acknowledged that decisions may not always be consciously racist, but the effect is still discriminatory. Managers may act on stereotypes or discomfort without realizing it. Organizations have a responsibility to train staff to recognize and challenge these biases. Good policies on paper are not enough if they are not followed in practice. After hearing the full details of Michelle Cox's experience and the tribunal's findings, here is a question for every viewer. Have you or someone close to you ever faced subtle or overt discrimination in the workplace that made you feel invisible, undervalued, or forced to work twice as hard just to be treated equally? Especially in public services like healthcare or other institutions. Please share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. Your stories help build a bigger picture and show that these issues are widespread. Talking about them is the first step toward change. Looking beyond this single case, the implications are profound. The NHS is one of the largest employers in Europe. How it treats its staff sends a message to the entire country. If black and ethnic minority workers cannot thrive inside the health service, it undermines public trust, especially among the communities that rely on the NHS the most. It also affects the quality of care. Diverse teams bring different perspectives and better serve diverse patient populations. Politicians and NHS leaders have made public commitments to tackle racism. There have been action plans, diversity initiatives, and equality training. Yet cases like Michelle Cox's keep appearing. This gap between rhetoric and reality must be closed. Stronger accountability mechanisms are needed. Independent oversight of grievance processes. Better protection for whistleblowers. Transparent reporting of disciplinary disparities. Until these changes are made and enforced, trust will remain broken. Globally, this case fits into a wider pattern. Healthcare systems in many countries show similar racial disparities in staff treatment. In the United States, black nurses have long reported higher levels of discrimination and burnout. In Canada and Australia, Indigenous and minority healthcare workers face parallel challenges. Michelle Cox's victory provides inspiration and legal precedent that can be studied and referenced internationally. It shows that persistence in the courts can force institutions to confront uncomfortable truths. Media coverage of the case brought it to national attention. Some outlets highlighted the bravery of Michelle Cox. Others focused on the broader questions it raises about the NHS. Public discussion is important, but it must lead to concrete action rather than just headlines. Real change requires cultural shifts at every level of the organization, from senior leadership to frontline management. Michelle Cox has shown what is possible when one person refuses to accept injustice. Her case reinforces the legal duty on employers to address racism properly. It highlights the impact of subconscious bias in workplace decision-making. Most importantly, it gives hope to other staff who may be suffering in silence right now. You are not alone. There are pathways to justice, even if they are difficult. As we reflect on this landmark tribunal win, we must balance celebration with realism. One victory does not fix a systemic problem. There are still thousands of black and ethnic minority NHS workers facing daily microaggressions, barriers to promotion, and unfair treatment. The fight continues. But cases like this one chip away at the old culture of denial and impunity. We need leadership that listens. We need processes that are fair and transparent. We need a genuine commitment to anti-racism that goes beyond training days and glossy reports. Above all, we need cultural change where every member of staff is valued equally and judged on their merits, not the color of their skin. Michelle Cox's story is ultimately one of resilience and hope. She took on a powerful institution and won. She turned her experience into advocacy. She continues to push for a better NHS and a fairer society. Her courage should inspire all of us to speak up against injustice wherever we see it. Thank you for watching this in-depth exploration of Michelle Cox's historic victory against NHS racism. Stories like this are tough to hear, but they are necessary if we want to build a more just Britain and a better world. If this video opened your eyes or moved you, please share it widely with friends, family, and colleagues. Every share helps amplify these important truths. Subscribe to the channel for more hard-hitting investigations into UK and global racism and discrimination. Turn on notifications so you don't miss future videos. And check out the next video in this series, which looks at another major institutional failing in Britain. Your support makes this work possible. Together we can keep shining a light into the darkest corners and demand the change our society needs. Stay informed. Stay courageous. Until next time.